Sekarang dia salah satu mungkin ya, suci ada dia dia suci lah kalau di ya, oh dengan
So we're looking at Canto 10, Southern Volume, Chapter 84, the Sage's Teachings at Kurukshetra. And then we're looking at verse 1. Sri Sukha Avacha. Sri Sukha Avacha. Sutta Prita Sabala Putri Athai Yagyanasi. Sutta Prita Sabala Putri Athai Yagyanasi. Madhava Atha Sita Atya Pita Swakopya. Madhava Sita Swakopya. Krishna Kilamanti Haropana Yanu Bandanam. Krishna Kilamanti Haropana Sarvavishimya Alam Asru Kalatu Laksya. Sarvavishimya Alam Asru Kalatu Laksya. Sri Sukha Avacha. Sri Sukha Avacha. Shrutva Prita Sabala Putri Atha Yagyanasi. Shrutva Prita Sabala Putri Atha Yagyanasi. Madhave Atha Kistika Patnyana Uta Swalopya. Madhave Atha Krishna Kilatamani Atmani Haropana Yanu Bandanam. Krishna Kilatamani Haropana Yanu Bandanam. Sarva Visimya Alam Asru Kalatu Laksya. Sarva Visimya Alam Asru Kalatu Laksya. Sri Sukha Avacha. Sri Sukha Avacha. Shuddha Prita Subhaya Putri Atha Yagyanaseni. Madhuri Atha Siti Papatnya Utta Swagopyaha. Krishna Kilamani Haro Pranayanu Vandanam. Krishna Kilamani Haro Pranayanu Vandanam. Sarva Visheshamya Kalam Akshu Kala Kulakshaya. Sarva Sri Sukha Avacha. Sri Sukha Avacha. Sutta Prita Sabala Putri Atha Yagyanasi. Sutta Prita Sabala Putri Atha Yagyanasi. Madhavaya Asta Sipita Patyan Uta Svagopaya. Madhavaya Asta Sipita Patyan Uta Svagopaya. Krishna Khilita Mani Haro Karna Ma Nu Bandanam. Krishna Kilamanti Haro Goswami said,
Sutva,
hearing, Ratha, Kunti, Subala Putri, Gandhari, the daughter of King Subala, Ata, and Yagnanesi, Draupadi, Madhavi, Subhadra, Ata, and Kisiti, Stipa, of the kings, Patnya, the wives, Uta, also, Swa, Lord Krishna's own, Gopi and Gopis, to Krishna, Akila, of all, Atmani, soul, Hello, the Supreme Lord Hari, Naya, loving, Anubandhana, attachment, Sarva, all of them, Visidhu, become amazed, Alam, greatly, Asurkala, with tears, Akula, filling, Aksara, desires. Sukadeva Goswami said, Pritha, Gandhari, Draupadi, Subhadra, the wives of other kings, and the Lord's cowherd girlfriends, were all amazed to hear the Queen's deep love for Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the soul of all beings, and their eyes filled with tears. Sukadeva Goswami said, Pritha, Gandhari, Draupadi, Subhadra, the wives of other kings, and the Lord's cowherd friends, were all amazed to hear the Queen's deep love for Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the soul of the beings, and their eyes filled with tears. Purport. Draupadi is the chief hero in this assembly of exalted women, since it's explained by Srila Sridhara Swami. He had asked the question of Lord Krishna's Queen's answer by relating their respective stories. Since Gandhari and the other ladies named here were not even mentioned in the previous chapters having been present, Acharya Sridhara concludes that they must have heard the Queen's narrations only second hand. Indeed, Draupadi would never have spoken so freely in presence of Pritha and Gandhari that elders or before the gopis, whose attitude towards the Queen of Dwarka was not particularly sympathetic. Even though the gopis joined in shedding tears, it was more because of their being reminded of Sri Krishna's pastimes than because of any loving affinity between them and the queens. We should remember, of course, that there is almost perfect harmony on the spiritual level. Apparent conflict between pure devotees is nothing like mundane envy and strife. The jealousy of the gopis was more show than substance, being exhibited by them as an ecstatic symbol of their overflowing love for Krishna. Srila Sridhara Swami further analyzes the phrase Swagopya as implying that these gopis were the Queen's Swarupa, the original prototypes of whom the Queens were specific expansions. Okay. So what is going on here? It's a strange gathering is happening. So, this is from the previous introduction. On the occasion of a solar eclipse at Kurukshetra, Exalted ladies like Kunti, Draupadi and Subhadra got the chance to associate with Lord Krishna's queens, come in their own divine form. Seeing how much the Lord's consorts loved their husbands, the ladies were struck with wonder as the women talked amongst themselves, and the men did likewise. Great sages headed by Narada and Vasudeva, right there, desired to see Lord Krishna. The various kings and other leading personalities were sitting at their leisure, including the Pandavas, Krishna and Balarama, stood up as soon as they saw the sages. The leaders all bowed down to the great souls, inquired about their well-being and worshipped them by offering them sitting places, water and so on. Lord Krishna then said, "Now our lives are successful, for we obtained the goal of life, the audience of great sages and yoga masters, which even demigods only rarely obtain. The water at a holy place of pilgrimage and the deity forms of the gods can purify one only after a long, long, long time, but saintly sages purify just by being seen. Those who identify themselves with their bodies and neglect to honor transcendental sages like you are no better than asses." Okay, so it's donkeys, not bottoms. Right, okay. Alright, so what's going on here? Why is everyone turned up at this party? Why are there no disco lights? And why is there no dancing yet? Okay, so this is what we've got to try and figure out. Okay? So, Krishna is again setting an example of proper conduct. Okay, that's what we've got to understand. He's sitting down and he's bowing before the sages who just appeared. So we need to understand why this is happening. Okay, I'm going to try and illustrate this using a diagram. Okay, just do a drawing. You can do that. Okay, so drawing. Here we have the Krishna's system. So this is the universe. Very accurate diagram of the universe. Let's go. And in the universe we have different living entities. So this is the earthly realm, earthly plane. And we can have a little ant here. We have a human. And this is a demigod. Somewhere up here is a Brahma, Brahma. Brahma there. Demigod. Human ant. Okay? And less than ant is someone like me, so I'm about it for myself. I don't do self-portraits anymore. So, what we've got going on is, Krishna wants all the living entities in the material world, universe, to go back to Krishna. Right? That's why he's created the material universe. Right? The living entities here in this material universe, there are many material universes, all have one thing in common. They have a disease. And this disease has two elements. Okay? Desire and hate. Yeah. Or known as envy. Yeah. We know this with Bhagavad Gita 7.27. Okay? So these naughty souls that were in the spiritual world, here's Krishna in the spiritual world, here's the soul that's playing for him with him. Then the soul said, "Oh no, I want to be just like him. How does he get all the attention from all these millions of gopis?" Gopis, naughty soul, Krishna. Okay? So the naughty soul ends up in the material world. Okay? Like us. Yeah? And because we have this desire to emulate Krishna, and we have an envy of Krishna as well. Those are our two symptoms of our disease. Okay? So they really signify why we're falling. Okay? So Krishna has to create a system whereby he reforms our behavior. Okay. So, why reform our behavior? Okay. Yeah. So we know how to get back to the spiritual world. So far, so good. Go with me. Yeah. Okay. Probably you will speak to my class. Can't believe I'm joking. he's in trouble. Yeah, he's trying to come back from that. So what Krishna has to do, unfortunately, is sometimes things get so messed up, particularly on earth, that he's got to go, oh God, I've got to go there. I've got to go there and show them how to behave. Okay? So he's like, come down here, right? And he comes down, and we'll give a 4.7, in his original transcendental form. He doesn't have a body like our body. Right? He's not a conditioned body made of matter. It's made of spiritual energy. It's a transcendental body. Okay? And he has to show the proper way of acting. Okay? We know from Bhagavad Gita that he comes down whenever the miscreants, the real mischievous human beings, are gathered in huge force, okay, in order to upset everyone else. Okay? Now, what's happening on Earth at this particular period of time is there are some beings, red is sort of, if we look at red being spiritual here, that are almost out of the material world. They almost get out of here. Okay? They kind of turn up at the airport, they're up the gate, they've got their boarding pass, they've got their ticket, they're ready to go back. But there's a bunch of very naughty ground staff from the airline, okay? And they won't let them on the aeroplane to get back. Okay? And this particular ground staff are like the crews, the those parts, okay? And this ground staff need a proper manager to come and set the example. The current manager isn't working very well. Okay? They Krishna descends. Primarily for the pious, who are ending their billions of births as ants and spiders and snakes and so on, turning back into human form. Okay? So that's why he's descending. So the reason he's gathering all the sages there is the sages are able to eventually get people to behave properly. That's their role. The Brahmins at the top of society. That's a very no such thing as Brahmins. You can't be a Brahmin by birth. Okay, this is the myth. If you remember, King Bharata, when his sons wanted to all become king, none of them got to be king because they didn't have the nature of a king. So he got someone from the outside. So under the Vedic system, your nature, which is determined by all your previous births, will signify your position in society. Right? So that's why all this is going on. Right? Okay. So here we have another system. I don't know if you can see that. So the sages, okay, are primarily responsible for one of these two systems, yoga and karma kanda. And outside that, there's the other system of sacrifice. And this elevates you eventually to the path of yoga. Yoga means linked to Krishna. Alright. The basic premise of this system is that as you sacrifice through your actions, you get elevated in terms of the bodies and the type of subtle body you get. Okay? So if we go back to the picture, here's an ant, lives millions of births as an ant, becomes a human being. The human being, as Prabhupada says, was karma, which is action. Action is for sacrifice. Through sacrifice, the human being gets better and better births. Okay? They become a demigod, may become a wealthy person. And through that sacrifice, we end up in one of these paths, karma kanda, which means I go to God and commit sacrifice, I go to some religion, because I want something in return, normally material wealth. And through karma kanda, we may fall to yoga, or we may directly go to yoga through sacrifice. Yoga means acts linked to Krishna. Okay? So what we have to learn through our day-to-day lives is the more we act in sacrifice, the more our propensity for sense gratification diminishes. Okay? We are on a journey of sacrifice. That is why we are here. Okay? We're here to give away. When we chant, we're spending that time with Krishna, we're sacrificing some of our time. We could be doing sense pleasure of that. Okay? So A yogi, Krishna says, chapter 6, Bhagavad Gita, is interested in reducing over time, this is time, the amount of sense gratification he does. Okay? And Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita that we do this by practice plus detachment. Okay? This is us, we are a soul. Okay? We are in a body. We are covered by two things. Okay? We're covered by intelligence, the mind, and the false ego. All of these, and the material body, are Krishna's external enemies. Yeah? Bhagavad Gita 7.4. Yeah? And by sacrificing sense gratification, we will reduce the impact of these things. Okay? That's what purification is. Particularly the impact of the mind and false ego. Okay? So chanting Hare Krishna, apart from having the Lord with you, okay, is also about learning to identify the mind and not identify with the mind. Okay? So, what does that mean? That means when you feel like eating 50 chocolates, you go, that's my mind. That is me, I'm the soul. So I'm not going to identify with that desire. That desire is not me. It's a concoction of the material world. I am separate from the desire. Okay? Otherwise, it's very difficult to make spiritual progress. If we identify with this, it's known as the subtle body, just as much as we identify with the physical body, we're going to find spiritual progress very difficult, because we cannot segregate who we really are from our desires. Our desires could be, I want my child to be first in swimming. That's still a material desire. Okay? That's not what Bhagavad Gita teaches us. Bhagavad Gita teaches us that our only desire ultimately is to please Krishna, and that's how we become a pure devotee. Okay? And there are various forms of sense gratification. As we progress in devotional service, we have to identify the obvious and the subtle forms of sense gratification, which where the mind goes. Okay? Subtle is often prestige. Okay? Or, I want to be better than somebody else. Okay? That's a very dangerous one, because that could be envy, which is the reason, if you remember, we've ended up in the material world. Okay? Somewhere I put up here. Desire and hate and envy is the reason we've ended up here. So we need to identify what our mind is doing, not identify as the mind. Okay? Car, house, millionaire, beautiful clothes, etc. Right? This takes time, it takes practice and detachment. Yeah? Krishna says you have to practice plus have detachment to do this. Okay? If you just pick this up in all the lessons over the next 3 years, you've got a good basis for progressing. Okay? Just pick up when you're not the mind. Just grasp that focus point. Yeah? And don't identify with your desires. Okay? That is the beginning of spiritual progress. Because if you don't identify with your desires, you won't want what those desires are. If you don't want what those desires are, you'll be less interested in the material world. If you're less interested in the material world, you'll become more interested in Krishna. Okay? It's just like if you put oil and water together, and you get rid of the water, which is your material desire, and fill the glass up with oil, which is bhakti. Okay? Now, Arjuna says to Krishna in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 6, but do you know what? I can't sit in the corner and practice yoga and think about it and purify myself. Because there's the one thing that he wasn't able to do in the Bhagavad Gita. I don't know if you know this. But Arjuna was not able to have equality of vision. He admits to Krishna. Right? He could not see Duryodhana and Yudhishthira as the same. Which is just different levels of conditioning of the soul and the body. Yeah? Spiritual vision says whatever state one is in, whatever aggression they have towards you, or whatever nastiness they have, you just see as the soul having a disease. Yeah? But Arjuna says, I can't see that. That Duryodhana was so horrible. And effectively what he's saying is, I'm so attached to how horrible he was in my mind, that I cannot do Dharma yoga. It wouldn't be possible for me. So the only path I can take is one of activity. Okay? The soul by its own nature is active. It can't be passive. The question is, where does the soul identify the activity with? Okay? And that is through the mind. Yeah? So you have to realise that there's just like something stuck on your face which is showing you different pictures. Yeah? It's just like goggles. It's not what you actually are seeing. Okay? This is a concoction. Okay? So Arjuna is basically led through the path of karma yoga and bhakti yoga. Okay? So Krishna's attendance on earth and getting everyone here and getting the queens here, which are pure devotees, and the other ladies who are not pure devotees, who therefore have envy passively for the queens of Krishna, is showing us how not to behave if we're going to end up carrying on being here. Okay? And so that we can identify the desires of the mind, particularly the subtle desires of the mind. He's better than me, I'm better than him, she's doing so well, I'm not doing so well, why is that devotee doing this, but I'm not going to do this, blah, 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 blah. Yeah? Very, very attached to material energy, which is the subtle body. Yeah? You have to see yourself as not being the subtle body. Okay? I'll go back to the panel. I hope that's all clear. I'm sorry to labour those points. Okay, so as we've looked at, okay, this whole system in this universe is designed by way of linking karma, which is action, to sacrifice. Once you have a body that has intelligence, or a cat, or a human form of intelligence, you have to act for sacrifice to progress yourself. Okay? There can be no spiritual progress if there is no action which has a result of sacrifice. Okay? Otherwise you're going to get really bad karma. Okay? So what happens if in this system of sacrifice something goes wrong? And there's a disaster. So everything's going well in Krishna consciousness, everything's wonderful, you're a lovely girl, you come to the temple all the time, chanting your rounds, and then outside you see this most beautifully attractive young man, and you go, do you know what? I think I'm going to go to the beach with this guy, I'll come back to Krishna in about 10 years' time, or 25 years' time. You never come back, okay, you start going shopping, you start getting a lovely house, then you get lovely handbags, the handbags are expensive lipstick, you start going to Burnside in the shop called Becca, which is very expensive lipstick. I don't know that because I wear lipstick, and if I do wear lipstick, it's no one's business. But anyway, it goes on with material desires, okay? And then you got lost, and the next life you ended up as a dog. And then you kind of go on and on. But Krishna says, actually, you're not going to be penalized in heaven for this. Okay? Because spiritual activity is inalienable. It never burns up. It always accumulates. Why? Because as I said to you, the entire purpose of this system, the reason the material world, the universe was created, was to teach you to reform your behaviour to go back to Krishna. Krishna always wants you to go back to him. All the time. He's wanting you to go back to him. It's just that your conditioning is stopping you. Okay? Yeah. So once you address your desires alongside Krishna's, you will accelerate your going back to Krishna. Okay? So you will not fall down from this position. Okay? He promises Arjuna. Right? You will get a suitable birth by which you can carry on. Right? Your parents will be wealthy, but not too wealthy to distract you. Your parents will be spiritually inclined, or you'll be in an environment where you're going to find devotees. That will always happen. And Krishna says you'll be naturally attracted to this. Right? Naturally attracted. How and why you'll be naturally attracted? If you remember, I explained that we are the soul, and we're covered by the subtle body, which is the false ego, mind, and intelligence. And those are Krishna's energies. 7.4. Your mind, intelligence, and false ego are no different to this piece of wood. They're still material energy. Don't think of it as any different, okay? And what you will get in terms of that conditioning will automatically lure you towards that. In the same way that somebody has come here to enjoy, has a mind relevant to material, high level material enjoyment, be attracted to Rolls Royces, you will be attracted to Krishna. Right? So whatever you do in Krishna consciousness will never dissipate. Will never go away. There's nothing to be lost. Right? And on that basis, you might soon become an accumulator of spiritual wealth. Yeah? You might as well become an accumulator. And the best way to become an accumulator is to watch the mind very, very, very carefully. Right? Not in a lazy way, no, actively. How much of Krishna is coming in every 30 minutes during the day? We divide the day into 48 30-minute sections, right? Or 96 50-minute sections, right? 192 7.5-minute sections, whatever you want to do, right? Ad infinitum. You have to watch the mind, okay? Because what's happened is the subtle body has got all the conditioning from the previous birth, which you're trying to get rid of. When you chant Hare Krishna and listen to the chanting, right, which is Krishna himself, this material energy, this prakriti, Devi practically is under Krishna's control. So as soon as Krishna is here, the reformation begins. He doesn't want you to waste your time, he wants you to get out of the material world that he's created as quickly as possible. Okay? Now sometimes what is happening is disaster, even bigger disaster occurs, that the girl who goes outside and ends up in the car with the attractive young man. Okay? And Prabhupada particularly was interested in writing 10th canto for one very big nuclear reason. Okay? Above all of the reasons I've given to you today. Right? There's one very big nuclear reason. Okay? And you can say that Prabhupada here had a bit of hate. And if you like Krishna in the way Prabhupada does, it will stir some emotion in you. Okay? So there is an alternative thesis, made-up thesis, which exists in the world, unfortunately, about all of this, that we have to be very careful about, which is at the heart of much of Prabhupada's writings and work. Okay? And this system is this. So this is one system that we've just looked at. Material universes, spiritual practice, go back to spiritual life. But there's another bogus system which exists. Okay? There's a system like this. This is Brahma. Yeah? This is different entity. This is Sattva. The modes of nature, as you know in chapter 14, Bhagavad Gita. Very important if you want to understand the mind and conditioning. You have to read the purports 14.1 to 14.9. Otherwise, I don't know how you progress with bhakti is possible. Right? But here's another thesis. Sattva, then you have the mode of passion, and then you have rajas, and you have tamas. Okay? And here's the material energy. Here is the souls which are born into passion. Here is Krishna in the mode of goodness. Hence, how can Krishna be under the modes of nature? Right? And the idea of bhakti is you go from rajas to sattva as you practice bhakti, which a lot of people, even in this world, will do this and think this. And then you join the Brahmajyoti, the Brahman, and you'll be free and liberated. Right? Absolute utter nonsense. Right? Because we know that Chaitanya has said that the soul has a dual form. It has the nature of the Supreme, but not the potency of the Supreme. Okay? It is Sat Chit Ananda. Yeah? Eternal full knowledge of this. Just like the Lord, but it's independent and lost in the material world, but also dependent. Because what it's dependent on is not slavery. When we use the word dependence, we think there's change coming out. No, it's dependent on enjoying a particular type of pleasure that is forgotten. Okay? That's what it's dependent on. Okay? And as you learn this pleasure, we find out who we really are. We are these entities that are supposed to be constantly enjoying on the non-material platform. Right? And we're supposed to be enjoying our own individual relationship with Krishna. Okay? And that comes from not just service. Service is an entry point to something more important. Okay? If you have this really great friend who you have your primary relationship with, then your objective is to please that friend constantly. Right? The gopis and the 16,108 wives that appeared here, they really have one focal point. They want to please Krishna constantly, and so Krishna is constantly pleasing them. Right? It's through that desire to please that real happiness comes. Right? So you can't have real happiness in this world if you do sense gratification, because that just isn't the desire to please Krishna. Just isn't. By its own nature. Okay? That's something selfish. That's segregation. That's a separatist mentality. Okay? In the same way, this desire to join the Brahman, where it's gone, desire to join the Brahman is a selfish idea of separate enjoyment. Yeah? So the Mayavad school is the idea of separate enjoyment. But we know that we cannot function like that. That's what's caused us to be here. Yeah? We have to stop enjoying separately. We have to enjoy with. Yeah? When Lord Kabira in Canto 3 talks about oneness, Prabhupada makes the point. We're not talking about merging into a deity. We're talking about merging into Krishna. We're talking about having an individual relationship. Right? I was about to call you Steve, but I'm very strange. I don't know your names, so I pick Pradeep. Pradeep, if I take Pradeep to the pub, to obviously have water, some drink, anything else in the pub, and Pradeep and I sit opposite each other. Pradeep, I like you so much. I want to merge into you. Merge inside you. You know? But he said, but we love coming here and playing cards. How am I going to play cards with you? I'll merge inside you. Somehow it will happen. We'll enjoy it like we'll enjoy it. Okay? But people think I thought I was a bit crazy. Okay? So it's called negating, destroying the relationship. This merging is destroying the relationship. Yeah? We don't want to do that. We want to celebrate the relationship. We want to be in the relationship. Right? Constantly in that relationship. We want to do everything we can for this other person in the relationship. Okay? And that's what the queens signify. The sages signify the repeated sacrifice, birth after birth of action, to reach the level of the queens that are only interested in pleasing the Lord. Okay? And the reason Draupadi is very, very quiet, as it says in the purport, is because this is a secret science. This idea of constantly pleasing the Lord. Right? So when Lord Chaitanya comes down, obviously he comes down with three very interesting partners, specifically, but two of them are very interesting. Gadadhara and Srivastava Pandit, right? They're interesting because Gadadhara is who? She's Radharani. And Srivastava Thakur is Pablo Pandit, is Nara Muni, right? So when Lord Chaitanya, which is Krishna who comes down to enjoy Radharani's enjoyment of Krishna, right? So Lord Chaitanya comes because he looks at Radha and goes, I will get to enjoy the way she enjoys me. I will come as my own pure devotee, right? So what becomes very interesting in Chaitanya Charitamrita is what Gadadhara Pandit is thinking when Lord Chaitanya is doing X, Y, Z. Because Pandit is Radharani. And Radharani is looking at, for example, Lord Chaitanya. Lord Chaitanya is dancing with Jagannath and going, wow, that's my dance. That's my love. And she's getting even more ecstatic. She's seeing her own love. Before she was just enjoying her love, now she's getting to see it. It's quite profound. So thus, Thakur, when his son dies, and it's a kirtan, very famous. Okay? I'm not saying we should all be like this, of course. The son dies, the weeping starts to wail. What does he do? He's Narayana, of course. Kirtan and Lord Chaitanya is next door, in another building. And stop crying! Stop crying! He's just got to tell what he's just gone somewhere else, don't worry about it. And the kirtan, you're interrupting the kirtan. The transcendental pastime which is eternal, you can't interrupt it with your material waiting. Why do we learn these things? Because we have to understand the limits and the degree of our attachment. They are called standard settings. When we used to teach human rights law, we used to say these are standard settings. There will be no genocide according to the Genocide Convention. Nobody will be imprisoned without trial. Standard setting rule, right? These are standard setting rules that go along from the Bhagavatam and Chaitanya Charitamrita. So we have to say, oh, I need to kind of learn from this standard setting rule. I need to aim for this standard. Okay? Yes. So last Pandit he's telling everyone to calm down. Just the material soul is passing on to the body. Yeah. But we also have to be practical as well, right? But we have to be careful when people say to us, we have to be practical as well. Okay? It's practical for the moment. So Arjuna is told by Krishna, when Abhimanyu dies in the battlefield of his son, Krishna doesn't go, Dehi swinging Gatade, Hijo, Govardhana, Gatade, Gatade, the soul passes from the body of youth and old age, another body of death, why are you crying? No. He's taught you the distinction between attachment and affection. You have affection, because it's a soul that's a part of Krishna, that's left the world, and maybe hasn't fulfilled its reason for being here, which is to become Krishna conscious. And that's the sadness you feel. That's the sadness you feel. Not the material conception of sadness, but a spiritual affection. Okay? When some spiritual master goes back to the spiritual world, we don't think about the body oh my God, that Tom can carry in the heart. No. No, just go back to this. No, we're thinking, wow, we're going to miss that spiritual presence here to guide us. And that love of Krishna that this soul was showing on earth, which is the example was. But also, I will occasion Swami's recently did an interview about the passing of Kanana Maharaj, his spiritual master. He said, there was a 50-50. There was a sadness for the loss of the soul because he's not here. But also there's a great happiness because they've gone back to Krishna. They're with Krishna, right? And that's spiritual vision. That's the way you start looking at life. Because nothing here is permanent. Nothing here is going to stay here forever. Okay? This body is changing every second. Every second, everyone in this room is closer to material death. It's a reality. Right? And there's a whole bunch of people out there who want to deny that. They want to live as if it's never going to happen. And if they don't understand why that's going to happen, they'll never begin to have spiritual awakening. Okay? So, I've left most of my PowerPoint behind, I'm sorry. So, the points I want to really get across today is this idea of action, where the mind is, not identifying as the mind, identifying the mind, not identifying with the mind, identifying separately, learning how the mind takes you to sense gratification, and moving that sense gratification in action to karma, which is used for sacrifice. The more we learn that, the more purified we will become. The easier Krishna consciousness will get. If we just do ritualistic practice, 16 rounds, go to Mars, 16 rounds, go to Mars, okay, rounds, then we're not going to learn to control the mind. Yeah? What you then get is this very problematic problem we have in ISKCON. Okay? This is the problem. You get. Look at I didn't turn it off because there's something embarrassing there. I'm really fool, I bet there's something really interesting. Okay, so this is the problem we have if we just do ritualistic practice and don't watch online. Okay? Our sadhana, our practice is here. Perfectly done 16 rounds. Right? I went to Bangalore 5 times a week. Did everything I could, did service in the temple. But our mindset, our mentality will be down here. I still don't like that devotee. I don't like what he does to me. I don't like his person at work. I don't like the person outside. I want this for myself. Next week I get to buy a large handbag for myself. But what's going on in the mind and what's going on in the practice is too far apart. It's too far apart. Okay? This is because you're not watching the mind. That's happening. Yeah? When you're chanting, you're not listening to the chanting. Yeah? What should be happening over time, this is okay. Over time, if we've got sadhana, mindset, right? Sorry. Right. Sadhana. Sadhana, mindset. Yeah, that's what should be happening. Sadhana should be increasing the mind to be going with the sadhana. They say in monasteries, in Benedictine monks and monasteries, the only competition we have is the competition of how much we love each other. That's the only competition we have. Yeah, that's what we need. How much do we love each other? How much do we understand each of us is part of Krishna? That Krishna loves each and every soul here because he's made them coming from ISKCON. It's giving them a human love. Yeah? How can we show that love to each other? How can we show the love that Krishna shows for us to each other? Those are the important questions. Otherwise, it's just practicing. You know, you can get a parrot to Hare Krishna, but if you know that, you can do that. You don't want to be a parrot, you go, hey parrot, how much do you love my soul? Parrot, just repeat the mantra, I don't know what you're talking about. Okay? That's a bit meaningless. Okay? Therefore, we have to learn to watch the mind. When the mind is trying to be envious, we have to slap it. Like a naughty child. Don't be slap your mind, but slap it down. Watch the mind. It actually requires a lot of effort. Right? If you've never done bodybuilding before, right, what you do, it takes about a year and a half just to get the muscles ready to do the bodybuilding. You have to go and start doing lifting very light things. Sometimes we make you do the movements with no weights. So you can just adjust that. Yeah? But it's practice, it's constant practice. Yeah? The mind will go within a second if your mind is trained. Yeah? It will go within a second to where it doesn't need to go to. Okay? And also, be careful of your habits. Sense objects, achievements, prestige at work, recognition itself is big for your sense of joy. I recognize what I do. Imagine you're a petrol can and there's fire everywhere. And you're walking around. That's what you're walking towards. Okay? You don't want to combust, do you? Right? You don't want to combust and explode, no. So you've got to be very, very careful to deal with yourself as a petrol can. Okay? Okay? If you really know your mind is wild and naughty, just think of yourself as a petrol can. You start watching Netflix for more than 6 hours or whatever it is. You know? I used to do this, 2007 or whatever it was, ISKCON. I remember once, Harry and I, back at home, we aren't probably open, to be honest, because I'm unstated, so I can be open and honest. I used to go Harry and I would go to the pub, halfway to Harry and I, have a few beers, to go back to Harry and the temple president was sitting with me, and he knew what was going on. I thought he doesn't notice. I'm a bit drunk, he doesn't notice. So then I go to the class as well, a bit drunk. And he'd get on and was in again. But okay, he comes to the temple, he moves the potatoes in the basement. Sometimes he cleans the kitchen, it's okay. Oh, what are those guys, right? So, but I didn't know, I don't know why I go anywhere. You know, I'd go walk past home, there's a bar, okay. And come back that way, I'll go towards the back of the corridor and they won't notice. And I'll appear in the class half an hour later. And everything will be fine. Sometimes you get away with it. And sometimes when there's someone goes, hope you enjoyed your time in the pub. And you guys did get away with it at all. Right? So that, it's practice, okay? It's practice, it takes time. We're talking about something that happened over 20 years ago. Now we would be like, pretend I'm not that person. But we have to also be humble. You know, we've taken millions of births and colonies. We've had millions of colonies of births. We've been millions of cockroaches. We've been to the hellish worlds millions of times. If you know the desires of your mind, you know that you've been to the hellish worlds. Right? You have to admit it. You really think about the kind of things that go through my head. Right? But now is a chance to put them through. So take this one chance. You may not get it for many births. Take this one chance. Try and put the mind in this place. Okay, sorry I've gone off the PowerPoint. But thank you for listening to my writings. I'm taking any questions that anybody wants to ask. Please be open. You know, there's nothing that's going on in my head that wouldn't be going through mine at some point in my life. You know, it's not that very labor, is it? Okay.
How to raise your sadhana with your mind and spirit? How to do that?
Yes, it's a good question. So, yes, Krishna can say practice is detachment. Okay? But we have to do two things. We have to learn the cost. We have to physically stop yourself. Yeah? So, a good example is Alcoholics Anonymous. Right? A friend of mine, right, relatively famous commercial friend of mine, he was an alcoholic. He covered it for many years. And what they do initially when they meet in a group is they just stop them from going near those things. Because you don't have the control yet. It controls the mental muscle. That's what goes over time. Okay? So you have to stop certain things. Right? For me, like, I just stopped meeting people in the pub. I used to have client meetings in the pub. Because if I met people in the pub 20 years ago, I had beer. And I was really bad at the time, I was drinking beer. So what was the best thing for me to do? Just stop. I didn't have the control. The best thing for me to do is stop going to that place where temptation is there. So identify what it is and where is the temptation coming, what is triggering that temptation. You might have 25 temptations. You might have to identify each and every single one, a notebook. That's why Brahmacharya Ashrams now everyone has a notebook, a diary. So write down what the mind is. Today I thought of this. Today I thought of having sex with this person. Today I thought of doing this naughty thing, that naughty thing. Yeah? And what will eventually happen is, especially as you chant by listening and pulling the mind back and you chant properly. Chanting is a good thing for brain exercise because when the mind goes, you stop it and do the beat again, which teaches the brain, actually actively biologically teaches the brain that it won't get away with not doing the chanting. At the same time, you learn to pull the mind back in. Yeah? See, every time I see that person, I want to have sex with them. Right? So what happens as you come to see that person, just what happens? Right, that thing forward go through the head. Okay? The problem is we never open about talking about these things. Sometimes you have to find groups. The Brahmacharya Ashram, what they do is say to you, go in a group of people, but whatever your masters are, you're comfortable in that group talking about. Right? Until you get confidence to openly talk about these things. And for a lot of people here, I know they're struggling, but I haven't got the confidence to openly talk about their problems. Yeah? And that is an important part of the process. You have to get to a point where you sincerely accept your failings, then you can talk about them. If you haven't sincerely completely accepted your failings, you're in denial of them. If you're in denial of them, you can't talk about them. If you can't talk about them, you won't deal with them. So all that answer will be there all the time. Yeah? The frequency might reduce, but it might be there all the time. Yeah? And eventually what will happen is, you'll just see let's say you like your lustful man, you'll just see Krishna in the yogis. You won't even see that person. That's what you'll see. I'm talking about my own journey, that's my experience. But whatever I see, I just see I just see the soul, I don't see them in a physical way. Yeah? And that's really, especially, it takes time. chanting for 22, 23 years Hare Krishna. You know, if you think about it, one person spent 25 years. And it can be quicker, it can be 7 or 8 years, but that is somebody who's getting up and listening to the chanting, facing the wall in the corner, and stopping the beat every time the mind goes to stopping the beat. They're really practicing. It's like bodybuilding. They're really building that bicep up really carefully. You know? But most of us, we don't have that self-control. You know? Sometimes people find it easy, like I came from a martial arts background, but you have to learn things like ice baths and freezing baths and high level of physical control. So that kind of background helps because it allows you to develop that control more quicker. But if you don't have that control, then you have to learn that control first before you can exercise that control. Okay? Maybe find something you like tea or chocolate or whatever it is, and go, okay, look, I'm going to buy the chocolate and learn what to eat it. So you learn to control my mind. You have to start with small wins. Not with like American GP controlling the mind. I don't think of sex, I don't think of Netflix, I don't think of, you know, I'm going to leave for here, it's 8:20, it's going to be precise, and the tongue is like taking over my mind. What is this guy talking about? Why would he eat now? 20 to 9, you know? All these things that need to go to the back, you know? One of the things I used to do is punch bricks. If you don't do it correctly with the right line, you break your whole hand and your whole elbow and takes 8 months in the car. It's very painful. So it's the mind that matters. You have to learn what doesn't matter. You know? That's focus. Focus is not. But you have it because you came here today. You have it. You must have some of it. You might have to get up. You're not lying in bed or in the Marriott reading a newspaper going, can I see the cricket stars? It's probably what they do this morning. Because the English cricket team is in the Marriott. So they're going there to get some water glass. Getting early for breakfast. You have a keenness for material enjoyment. You come here, which means you're already on the right path. And nothing you do here is ever going to diminish. It's inalienable. It can't be taken away from you. So you just need to keep adding to the cake. And if you can improve your mentality and make it match your effort at the same time, you will just start accelerating at a different level. You know? But you have to watch the mind. For most of us, you have to watch the mind. You have to admit to yourself where you are and watch the mind. Otherwise, it's just if I create a show as that become a Hare Krishna in a movie, it doesn't mean I'm a Hare Krishna. I'm just acting. Right? So we don't want to come here and go, we're on stage now. I'm back on stage now. What was I thinking about? A handbag. There's a handbag manual. Where's the shopping magazine? Let me read a Vanity Fair. Right? Be very careful. Krishna says the mind is your best friend and your worst enemy. But if you conquer the mind, bhakti is a piece of cake. It really, if you really think about what your biggest problem is, it's the mind. Right? So that's what I'll focus on the rest of these classes, mind. Any other questions? Yeah.
Sometimes, like you talk about controlling mind, obviously, almost impossible. But as I look back, as you mentioned. But sometimes, like, for example, let's say if you get a new job or if you get something nice or someone compliments you, it gets in your head and like you feel good about it, right? But then again, you don't want to feel too good about it because otherwise it's going to take over and stuff. And how do you control that kind of situation when you keep on thinking it perfect?
Yeah, so that's really very good that you've identified that firstly. So a lot of people won't identify that, just get puffed up. But you've done really well, you've identified that. So probably just to give the example, using Arjuna's quote, mind is more difficult controlling the wind. Right? You need focus. So if you imagine a newspaper being blown by a heavy gust of wind outside, right? It's easier to catch the newspaper than to catch the wind. Catching the wind is almost impossible, chasing the wind around. So we need a focus point. Okay? And Krishna is our focus point. Yeah? The deeper we do our japa, the greater we'll have that focus on the newspaper. Even though the newspaper is moving around like the mind, we'll be able to catch it. It's literally like catching it and putting it in the box. I don't know if you've ever had kittens. We used to have cats when I was very little. I barely remember it. But there's sort of one everywhere around there. What people scared about if they've got cats, you open the door and runs in the room and they get by the room. Right? The cat is in it, they're naughty animal. Right? But you have to keep putting the cat back into pushing it away from the door. Or if you have a puppy or a dog, you push it away from the door so it doesn't run outside and get run over. It's the same exact thing with the mind. Yeah? If you keep that door, if you keep opening the door, what's going to happen? So you know there's an open the door, don't open the door, close the door, walk away from the door. But you spotted that, if you keep focusing on that, you go, okay, I've got a little bit of pride in me. Who does this? Right? Let's not pretend to be safe. Yeah? Yeah? Someone praises you. I get very good class at that. Yeah? When I go to class, someone says, everyone else is going to class. I check my hair. I go to the mirror, I get very good class. No, we all have it. But it's immediately be able to stop it. Because you can always feel it happening and stop it. And eventually, when it can happen, it's kind of weird. Krishna is amazing. You know, he's in charge of this material energy. The mind is his energy. Yeah? The same way he's taking the left, right, and centre. Bhagavad Gita 18.61. We're like little Lego helicopters. He's moving us around. He's in total control. If you just put that little bit of extra effort in, I'm going to stop the mind. Krishna will facilitate. That's the other 50%. 50% you do, 50% Krishna will do. So you don't have to worry. But you've identified that, and that's what you're going to do, what he did, which is identify an issue. I get proud. And then you know to stop it. And if everyone does that, your interpersonal relationships with other devotees, with all of us will change. Because we won't put pride into the equation. We have to suck it out. You know? Trust me, I've got the worst problems. You don't really have to stuff it over my head. You know? I don't have to give you a sick bag like a railway, just in my head. Right? So, but we learn to just not even let the fire on mind. It's just practice. We have to practice from today. If you don't do it, practice from today. As you have your thought, just stop it. Like a cat running out of the house, you've got to stop it. You know? And at some point, you've got to can't believe that it's so difficult for me. I don't remember I couldn't chant more than 5 beats without getting my phone. In those days, there were no smartphones. It was just like a text message phone, you know, back in 2000 or whatever. And I thought, if I chant this when I tend to Hare Krishna, a little bit of chant, give up. Yeah, 2004, I just forget it. So for me, that try again a few months later, and then it fell, and then lose it. That chant and go, I look at the critical, forget it also. Look at the critical. You know? So it's what happened over time though, over 25 years, if you think about it, is I was actually practicing, but I was practicing in a very lazy, bad way, which was unplanned. So give up, practice, give up, practice, then give up less and less and less and practice more, give up, practice less, and then eventually practicing all the time until you're getting better and better. But we need a bit of confidence, we need to have that first breakthrough. And we're just about to give up, Krishna will give us that breakthrough, because he wants us to go back to him. Yeah. If it's not working, that means you have to have effort in for Krishna to pull you through the other side. Yeah, that's what you need to do. But if you can do what you've done, which is identify and speak about it, you'll be very close to getting it sorted out. Yeah, if the problem is we don't, we pretend it's not there. That's the problem. Because then it just carries on. You can't fix, if you pretend the plumbing is working when it's not, it's leaking, you'll never fix the plumbing. Of course not. Thanks. Anything else? I'll have to think of your question later.
I have one question.
Yeah.
In ISKCON we have been told like do as much as devotional service and be humble, be chanting, that will cleanse their heart and we can go back to God. So, but then that also takes practice. It's not detachment. There is part of detachment as well in that. So, how can we? You mentioned that we should not be doing ritualistic, but that is part of ritual.
Yes, no, initially it is. Yeah, initially it is, but be very careful. Because as Krishna explained in chapter 3 and chapter 4 of Bhagavad Gita, the entire system of the material universe is about sacrifice to get piety. So like everyone, I suppose everyone here, like I came to the temple back in 2003. What was I doing? I was working in the kitchen, or moving stuff into the kitchen, or cleaning the temple for like 7 years. That's what I did. Because I didn't have that punya, so I had to kind of do those exercises to get myself going, to clarify myself, to bring myself, to cleanse myself to a degree where I can start bhakti. Yeah? It's almost like karma yoga. Actually, karma yoga leads to bhakti yoga. At first I came because I was just distressed, I wanted some money, and it was fun as well. But mainly I came because I wanted something, you know? And eventually, if you come to Krishna and you want something, he takes if you show effort, he takes away the desire to want something away from you. Krishna will take that desire away from you. So yeah, initially we say that, go back to God and all that. But actually, what you want to progress to is not interested in going back to God, because that's selfish. What you're interested in is, I want to just please Krishna constantly. If I have to go to hell and be chained on the wall and be beaten, then that's what that will take. Because what matters to me is how happy Krishna is. That's the only thing that matters to me. So that takes time. That means you have to get rid of the false ego. It's not about you anymore, it's about somebody else. It's like, two young people get married very early on, 19, 20, they get married, they still got all their selfish habits. They don't realise it's about give and take. They have to think about the other person. But after 15, 20 years of marriage, that's going to change. They realise, oh, if I don't keep the other person happy, there'll be a problem, or something else will go wrong. So they have to work for the other person. And in Bhakti, it's like that kind of journey. Eventually, the only thing that will matter in pure love, which is not possible on the material plane, but in the spiritual plane, is you're only working for that other person. Like it's like an ultimate teenage romance. That's what Bhakti is. It's like this. It never ends, and you're always happy when this teenage girl or boy goes along, And then what really matters? You do anything. A teenage boy will do anything. I remember I was married with a French girl, and she was leaving in a van. The van was going probably 30, 40 kilometers an hour. But I jumped in the van, thinking I was a boy with that kid. I was so desperately wanted to be with that. But I wish I had that for Krishna, But I jumped in my stupid, we can't do anything at 18 or 17 for love, And that's where we'll get to. We'll do anything for Krishna. Forget it for religion, we enjoy ourselves. And it accelerates, So that's where we need to be. And if you can do Harinam, Sankirtan, that is the fastest way. Because that is the yajna for this age. That's the efficient sacrifice that purifies the fastest. So the idea of working in a temple, doing japa, and all that is eventually to get to Harinam, to get to what's going to please Krishna, what's going to please Lord Chaitanya. When you wake up, you go to sleep at night, tomorrow's not going to please Krishna. It's really liberating, actually. When you take yourself out of the equation, and you know Krishna's going to look after you, you don't have anything to worry about. Well, I've seen everything. I've had my entire property go on fire. I've had, murderous clients. I was a young lawyer. I used to deal with rapists, murderers, all those sort of people. And it was really scary. I've seen all sorts of horrible things. But I just know Krishna's going to look after me. Even if I'm in a room with a killer, I've often been in a room with a killer, and they could kill me. And Krishna will sort that out, And that's quite, there's no worry. We're only anxious, really anxious, because actually really anxious for sex gratification. That's what we're really anxious about. I'm worried about paying my mortgage because I want to enjoy the house. I'm worried about what my kids do because I want the pride of what my kids do. It's me, my body. If you just see other souls that need to be here to go back to Krishna, you don't care what happens to their school. You might be more worried about what happens to those bhaktas. It's more important to you. Or whether they become doctors or whether they pass with 1% or 100% to another. In fact, if they pass with 100%, it might worry you. They're going to be bound for the material world of karma. So your vision is spiritual, it's not material. It changes completely. That's what you've got to get to. Everything is for Krishna. This is Krishna's energy. We're these bodies that we're seeing of everyone. It's all Krishna. Pradeep's lovely bodies is Krishna's energy. Well, I used to teach more. If anyone went on my favourite too long, you should say something nice about them. I'll listen to you for a few seconds. It's no trick. Okay. Anyway, I hope that helps. Practice is the key. Watch the mind. Watch the mind. Make it your friend. Make it take you towards Krishna all the time. As soon as you think, I'm going to make hot chocolate, you're about to go to the kitchen to make hot chocolate. You think, how is the cowboy boys going to enjoy that with Krishna? Do you want hot chocolate? What kind of hot chocolate? Well, maybe I'll make it a bit nicer than I make it for myself. Then that's now different. That's transcendental. That's bhakti. That's no longer just you friend on the tongue. And suddenly the same act of doing it for Krishna. It's just mentality. Krishna is a super soul inside you, he's watching everything. Why not make this a nice place for him to sit as a super soul? He's watching everything that's going on constantly. Why not make him have a fun time? Imagine you're a cinema owner and this guest has come to your cinema every day, and he's there with the costume. Let's put on a nice screen. Let's not put on some sense gratificatory this and that movie. Making the same point in different ways, doing the same thing. Right, anything else? No, okay. Good. I hope I've convinced you all to buy a monster. Should I shift it back and